Hello, everyone. Today is a new episode of The Future of Skills, and I am very grateful to have a chance today to introduce you to our guest today is no other than Peter Wheely. Peter, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Peter, I will do a little bit of an introduction about you, just for those ones who might want to learn a little bit more about your background and about the type of setting that you've had when you've created your content for the book, which is focused on the leadership in AI, or the use of AI for leaders in particularly. So the introduction that I would have for you is the fact that Peter is drawing on 3 decades advising global organizations, including your experience at an equity partner and Big Four consultancy leading in learning, leadership, and talent practice in Switzerland, combined with insights from senior executives navigating AI transformation. And at the heart of the book is the SPA framework, a leadership rhythm for upgrading your operating system. Let me know if I've covered in a nutshell more than it was to be covered, but the likelihood is that, it's an intro to your book, your background, but please let me know if there's anything more to it.
That was a brilliant summary. I think that the one thing I perhaps would add is it's not just for people who are leading in big companies. It is actually including leading yourself and the transition that you as an individual need to consider and navigate over the coming years.
Thank you so much for this. And I do appreciate the fact that when we're looking into the topic of leadership, we need to be looking at it from both perspectives, isn't it? Us as personal branding element that comes into force as well, and the actual us as leaders in a workplace or any given organization. With that in mind, I have researched a little bit more about the reviews that have been published about the book. The book is currently available all over, starting from Amazon as the lead platform, and that's where I've sourced some of the reviews. So guys, you might be interested in seeing this. This is something that has appeared most recently, saying that this is a brilliant practical guide to navigate AI without losing the human touch, and we'll delve a little bit more into that. And the next one is a rare AI book that doesn't assume its reader is either a software engineer or on the verge of replacing their entire workforce, from Charlie. Now, with regards to the actual setup and how you've gotten there, we usually have a myriad of questions that would focus on the book itself. However, what I'm interested in a minute as well is you as a person behind that keyboard, behind writing notes and preparing the material for the book. Could you please kindly let me know in 3 words of your choice, who is Peter Wheely?
People first, empowerment.
Excellent.
I fundamentally believe that AI is incredible and it can have huge benefits for us, for organizations, and for society. But for those who are just trying to push AI for cost cutting and efficiency at the cost of human value, then I think there are grave concerns. So for me, it's a people first approach to AI is what I'm passionate about.
So with regards to that, let's dwell a little bit deeper into that, because my next question is no other than this, and meaning, what does the term stay human mean?
So the title of the book is Lead with AI, Stay Human. And I that was my working title when I started writing a year ago. And I went through various iterations thinking of different names for the book, and it ended up being really comfortable with the fact that it is a lead with AI. AI is one thing, but AI without staying human is also a huge risk. So that's why I wanted it in the title. So for me, staying human means keeping what is uniquely valuable about us. Now that is changing as AI's power and abilities are increasing, but still things around curiosity, innovation, coordination, making decisions with trade-offs. This could be the right decision from a financial perspective, but what about this? Those types of things are still certainly uniquely human. Things around empathy and ethics. I would also say we are uniquely positioned for being able to make decisions when we need to use empathy and ethics. And so I think that's really what I'm advocating, is that AI used correctly, that retains those human aspects, I think we've got a really good future looking ahead. One of the quotes that you brought up earlier was sort of mentioned, don't need to be a software engineer to read the book, and equally aren't scared that the entire workforce is then going to be unemployed and we're all going to lose our jobs. I think there is, of course, there's utopian and dystopian extreme views at the moment. And I'm certainly more on the utopian view, but with the caveat that we need to do things correctly, with care, and making sure that we are putting in the guardrails that we need to. And I think this, my message for all of your viewers would be to not lose hope that AI is going to suddenly, take all of our jobs and do everything, for the world, and there's going to be nothing left for us to do. I don't believe that's the case. But what I do believe is that it is fundamentally changing everything that we know about ourselves, communication, the way that we work, and how companies are going to be evolving over the future. And so the stay human part is that message to not lose track of the sight that the power of AI is absolutely sure and clear.
Yeah.
But equally, we as a race have got incredible things that we need to dial up that we haven't necessarily focused on in the past. We took them for granted. So as we get pinched, in terms of where we can find our unique balance, I think that's where we need to focus ourselves in upskilling some of those capabilities.
That sounds thoughtful as well, and thank you so much for sharing this, because I personally feel that there's a lot of talk in the mainstream media, of course, as well, around the fact that there's going to be a mass displacement of people in the workplace. There is a lot of communication that I'm also grasping from community members, part of communities of women in AI, for instance, or communities that are to deal with exploratory author content. I'm also a judge at the Business Book Awards. So for me, it's very important to get a little bit more of an understanding of each camp and how people feel about what's currently happening. To your understanding, and I know that there's a lot in the book around how leaders are currently using AI and how your advisory standpoint around that should be as well, with regards of an ethical use of AI as a tool, but also with regards to what's the sentiment in the workplace regarding that use. How far do you think we've gone in terms of understanding correctly what AI is there to give us as leaders, and is there a good understanding from the perspective of those who benefit or are ought to benefit from that leadership exercise? I mean, the actual team members in the team.
Okay, there's a lot in there to unpack.
Yes, it's both views, isn't it? Not just one.
But I mean, if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, then the digital revolution, and now the AI revolution, they are significantly different. Back in the Industrial Revolution, it was doing more quicker. So whether that's in the fields with machinery, whether it's in the printing press or the weaving, the looms, it is fundamentally about speeding up what we're doing. The digital revolution was globalization. So yes, it was increased speed, but it was data then becoming powerful, and then being able to globalize the speed and our ability to make informed decisions. The AI revolution is now significantly different in that it is for the first time impacting the knowledge workers. So it's not about just doing, it's actually thinking. And then if you look at the last 3 years of the AI revolution, it started off, I mean, it was never basic, but it started off in terms of prompting. So I'll call that basic capability. I put in a prompt, I get an answer. And that is still how most people are using AI. And the problem with that is people are not then grasping the full capability. And then you transition that to answer your question in the workplace. If we look at the majority of job roles, it's anywhere between 30 to 50 tasks that most people are doing, for each of those jobs. Now, AI is very good at doing the majority of those tasks. So if you have a process and there is a set of tasks for that process, you can automate a large percentage of that. So you're seeing companies like IBM, Microsoft, HSBC, Oracle, 30,000 jobs, Salesforce, huge brands, huge names, and they're not just in the tech sector, who are looking at these jobs saying, okay, these are the tasks that people are doing. We can automate those tasks. Great, we can save costs, we can become more efficient, we can become faster at what we do. Therefore, we can fire a whole load of people and restructure. Now, those restructurings are often happening in some of the core services, so finance, IT, HR, legal, procurement. A lot of those were sort of automated and process-based roles. But it's not just in those spaces. It is, of course, now bleeding into all other roles. So again, just to come back to your question, I think where companies are going wrong are whether they're choosing that path of automation and cost cutting and efficiency, where they're just black and white looking at the roles and saying, okay, we can automate these tasks, we can automate these roles, let's cost cut. And what they're missing is that uniquely human value, as well as understanding where AI's capabilities is limited. And the other group of companies are those who are seeing the potential in people and how they can be more empowered, more elevated, faster, better, smarter, and create a lot more value for the organization with the power of AI. And that's what I think companies like NVIDIA, the chief executive, Jensen Huang, said recently, that he envisages a future where each one employee will have 100 agents. And he said he expects to double the size of his workforce in the next 2 to 3 years. And I'll give you another really nice example of a company that had a similar opportunity. So their shared service center at IKEA, 2,000 people were at risk because they'd automated all of the customer service inquiries and so on. And IKEA had two choices. They could say, okay, yes, we've automated these tasks, we don't need these people, cost cutting, let's go ahead with a restructuring. Instead, they chose to put people first. They valued their employees. They put them through an upskilling and learning and capability improvement program. And they restaffed these people onto a design and sort of creativity part of the business that didn't exist before this. And they created a $1 billion new business for IKEA to help customers design kitchens, bathrooms, and rooms in their house, to then furnish it with IKEA furniture. This did not exist before. And that's what Jensen Huang says are the leaders with imagination, where they can see the value of their people, as well as being powered by AI, and then finding new value for the enterprise that didn't exist before, rather than just that path one of cost cutting.
Exciting examples. Thank you so much for this, Peter. It does seem that these leaders, or their approach to how they do AI enablement in their company, is a little bit different to the rest of the masses. Would you say it's related to a latent awareness picked up by the rest of the leaders? And if so, how can this be remediated, do you think?
Yeah. So, yeah, of course, I think in any change, there's always a pendulum shift. This is the bright, shiny, new object. We've got to have this. And I'm seeing this a lot with board senior leaders saying, the pressure is here from our shareholders or from our various stakeholders. We have to do this. So let's spend. And the problem with that is that they are just putting AI on top of their existing processes, their existing structures, very often poor data quality, and then expecting magic to happen, which of course it doesn't. So, I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners will have seen some of the statistics, but anywhere from 75% up to 95% of all AI investment up till now has failed to return the investment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is staggering when you're talking trillions of dollars that has been wasted. So yes, the pendulum has shifted. Yes, everyone said we need to be on this bandwagon, we need to do it. But what very few companies have been prepared to do is to rebuild the foundations, to actually ask those critical questions, which is, we're not just doing things that we did in the Industrial Revolution. We're not just doing things faster. We are doing things completely differently, in new ways, and faster, better, quicker, and with new insight that we could never have imagined before. That requires a foundation rebuild. So I think we are seeing companies then move, from that pendulum shift, on one side back to the other, to say, okay, hang on, we need some better due diligence. We need to really understand some governance around this. The value of AI is in the data, not just automating one person's task to write better emails or to write better documents or whatever. Yes, of course, that's true, but it's the value of the data that joins up across the organization, from the hire to the retirement of every single employee, from the order of the materials through to the shipping of the final product to the consumer. And that's what AI is doing, is it's joining up the end-to-end processes. And I think, again, a really valuable message, I think, to your listeners is to think through whatever job they're doing, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's finance or law, is to say, okay, what is actually changing in organizations? What is likely to change in my role? And then how do I stay ahead of that curve? So I might be in marketing, and I'll use a really good example. So
Please,
my book, the book cover, in the past, this would have taken weeks for me and a designer to go through, brainstorm, do the branding, the colors, the look and feel, who's my target audience. All of that work would have taken weeks. I did 90% of this with AI. So you could say, well, my job as a creative or as a graphic artist, or somebody that's doing all of that sort of the design thinking with my customers, my job's gone. No, because actually the 10% to get this to the final point was where I needed a human. So of course I called an incredible graphic designer friend of mine, and in 2 days he did everything that he needed to do. AI could not do that uniquely human skill. So I think the message is not being scared about what AI is taking, but is to reimagine your identity to where you can uniquely add value.
Thank you so much. Very ample answer as well, because you've touched based on quite a few angles here with regards to the use of AI in organizations. How mature are leaders to be able to utilize the skill sets that are needed in order to understand what AI is really good at, and how it can then create the full flow for their management systems. But meanwhile, what do you feel about that perception that to be able to get there and take them some decisions like making a lot of your employees displaced pretty much overnight based on that efficiency that AI can bring is guided by the performance-based KPIs that you were just shared earlier, versus the emotional readiness, the emotional maturity that you've mentioned a lot about it in the book as well. So my question here is, do you believe we are emotionally prepared to the speed of AI?
Not at all. No. And I think there are some very dangerous examples where we've seen this. Again, there's been some tragic examples where lonely individuals have been using this as a coaching mentor, and using words that, of course, AI doesn't understand. I think the one example I heard was the individual saying that they wanted to come home, and AI said, yeah, come home. And then, of course, this tragic situation, the person, did commit suicide. I think we're seeing AI being used in relationships. And what I really talk about in chapter 2 is about artificial ignorance.
Yes.
Because I think the danger is that you outsource your thinking to AI. I've got so my son. I'll use my son as a perfect example. So he was going through his master's degree in psychology, and ChatGPT came out at the time he was, doing his degree. He could then just literally put his exam question into ChatGPT, get a response, cut and paste it into his document. There you go. I've done my thesis. I've done my assignment. I've done something which is at that stage was going to get a really good result, because the tutors, the examiners, didn't know about the power of AI. The problem with that is, this is what I call the artificial ignorance, is you then have to stand up and defend your thinking. You
Exactly.
can't do it. You've got no idea what has gone into it. I'm working with an agent at the moment to help me with a particular piece of work that I'm doing. I've got this most beautiful spreadsheet that my agent has created, and I don't necessarily know where all of the information has come from. That is where I have to spend the time to validate absolutely everything, to make sure that I can put my signature, if you like, on the output of this document. And so I think you talk about, the emotional side. I think absolutely we're not prepared for the impact. I think the impact of AI in terms of how we are finding answers, and I think what is uniquely valuable about us, and how we work, I think it's impacting faster than we can actually imagine. And I was talking to a professor recently about his class, and he was saying that he's really concerned that his the group that he's working with can't actually stand by what they're answering, because they haven't done the hard research, the hard thinking, and they're just coming up with quick answers. And I think this has got an impact on potential impact on society that we really need to be very, very cautious about.
Can't agree more, Peter. And thank you so much for raising and sharing this, especially when there are no particular guidelines that are uniquely standardized and are uniquely valid for everyone to use in one way or another, because again, there's this customization element to it. But then in terms of, you've mentioned earlier, the governance and the regulations that are needed in order to avoid the decision-making that is going to cost billions leaders in the long run. Do you think there's certain steps that might have already been done in that regard? Or if so, what are some of the more crucial steps that are needed still?
Yeah. No, there is. And I think there are more and more voices like mine who are coming and standing very, very firm and calling for ethical AI and
Right.
the way that it's being used in governance. The trouble is, I think if you go up to a political perspective, you've got the China-US race, and
Yes.
it's all towards this AGI. The moment that we have general intelligence, then it's exponential increase in the power of AI. So from a geopolitical perspective, that's sort of what's happening. You then come down a level to the organizations, and to some extent, there is the same thing happening at a business perspective, which is, if I don't do this, then my competitors will. Therefore, I need to be ahead at any cost, regardless of the collateral damage. And I also think that most companies don't have a societal responsibility. Most companies, unless it's a charity or non-for-profit, their job is to make money. If it's a listed company, their shareholders are only really concerned about the profit and their dividends. So it takes a very strong company, and there are companies like this who are saying, well, actually, we are going to put people first. We do see our societal responsibility, and actually, if we prioritize people and use AI responsibly, then our long-term sustainable future is going to be greater. And I think there are good examples. So I interviewed the CHRO at Mars, the confectionery business. This is exactly what she was talking about. They have a sort of a legacy family feeling in their organization, and that's what they want to maintain. They've got 150-year-old values that they believe is their responsibility to maintain. But companies like that seem to be relatively rare, unfortunately. So It's yeah, it's a natural consequence of selfish society, I guess.
How nicely you've put it in terms of the selfish society angle, and that the fact that there are some companies who have that strong awareness about their historical legacy and the values that they've built over time, versus those ones that are also potentially new. For instance, there's a ton of unicorns out there that are just coming up as mushrooms after the rain, and yet they would not necessarily have their values established before the performance KPIs would come into place. For the benefit of those new companies that are emerging, what do you think the new leaders, the CEOs, the founders, and those investors who are also believing in the trajectories of these companies, what do you think is some of the key skills they need to onboard for themselves in order to then roll the organizations in a healthier manner?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely worth spending the time thinking about it, because there is a difference between changing a legacy business
Yes.
like that, oil tanker in the sea. It just takes a long time to turn around, versus the new startups, with the companies that we're seeing as unicorns. We've already seen, the first billion-dollar company from, less than 10 employees. They're still predicting when that's going to come from one person. But I think the impact on individuals is, of course, different because they are tech-driven.
Yes.
But let me use an example of a Scandinavian startup called Lovable. I think, if I get this right, I think their valuation was 5.5 billion. Huge success. They can automate websites and apps at literally a click of a button. If you don't like where something is, you prompt, so it's no code, app and website creation. I'd built my own app in the past, and I'd spent over nearly £100,000 on this app. In Lovable, I created the same thing in less than 10 minutes. Incredible. So this company was then going through the roof in terms of its valuations, in terms of its scale, the number of companies that were then using their services. Then, of course, Cowork comes out, Claude Cowork, in the last 3 months. I'm not going to say it's killed Lovable's business, but it's completely changed their business. So to your question about the unique human value of individuals, those companies who are purely tech first, that forget that they need to continually evolve, that they need to continually think with curiosity, innovation, creativity, and reimagine the future that is never static anymore. That is where I think even tech companies need to rely on their employees. So I think, yes, I think it's very quick and easy now to find a tech-only solution. And there are lots and lots of examples of those that then suddenly look like they are, hockey stick growth. But whether they stay there in the long term is a different question, because the tech advancements are so fast, and what we knew 3 months ago is already out of date. Claude Bot, all of these, agentic solutions, they didn't even exist until 2026. So I think it really is this power of human with AI to have that sustained growth.
Can't agree more. And you've just mentioned the agentic solutions that are also in scope to be developed at a higher pace. With regards to your other mention of the CEO of NVIDIA mentioning that there would be at least 100 agents per person in the near future, how are you seeing the future of agentic AI with regards to the use of AI as a leader in the workplace, but also as an employee? Let's put the two angles together.
So this is my next area of research. So I don't have all of the answers, but very soon it's already happening, where we are managing hybrid workforce. McKinsey had a study in the last few weeks. Their average is 82 agents per person. That's what they believe in the next few years is going to be realistic. I don't think we're even good leaders of people at the moment. And yes, agents
it does
it's true. But you could argue agents are going to be simpler to look after. They don't have emotions. They don't have health issues. They don't have sick leave and all these types of things. But it also requires a unique set of skills to manage processes and automations where you can't validate the sources of that truth, that data. Then you are managing the hybrid workforce, where it's individuals who are also then managing these agents. So the potential confusion that can come into the mix is fraught with danger, with potential danger. So I really think these are the some core skills that I think we as leaders need to think about. We need to continually learn. We need to constantly try to evolve what we know now, because it's changing every single day. I think we can't just rely on judgment, which is my experience got me here, and I'm going to make a decision which I think is going to be good and sound and have a probable positive outcome. That's gone. So it's now, for me, it's around judgment under ambiguity, which is making the best decision today, but knowing it is going to change. So how do you lead a team where you've made a decision, not just the leader, but you as an individual in the team? You've made a decision, and then you have to go to your boss or to your team and say, actually, my decision is now wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That has to become okay.
That's interesting.
Because we can't, I know one company that had a huge made a huge technology decision last year. This happened before the agentic boom became commonplace. And you could say, well, they made the wrong decision. Well, no, they made the best decision that they could at the time. It's just that new technology has changed that. So how do they adapt to that change in situation? And I think that's something we're all going to have to become used to. And then I talk about enterprise orchestration. So another skill for leaders and for individuals to think about how their decision is orchestrating across other people who are going to be impacted by that decision.
Right.
So I could sit in finance, but yet my decision is going to hit the commercial team. It's going to hit the supply chain. It's going to hit procurement. It's going to hit all of those other functions. So because AI is automating all that, how do I think ahead to how this decision is going to be what I call orchestrating within the organization? So to answer your question, I think this hybrid workforce is bringing big changes, and I think we need to learn very different skills to manage people well, but also in this agentic age.
Thank you. It just sounds like it's going to be a very hard job for the leaders to be able to manage both ends, meaning people, but also the AI workflow, and to make sure that the sentiment is kept positive and lucrative and driven from the human force to be able to then utilize what's needed for company efficiency, but at the same time, the healthy operations within the company. I'm talking about the culture. Very curious to understand what the culture of the organization is going to look like in future with regards to the joint collaborative scope of both AI and human force. But that's a topic it sounds for another, if anything, podcast episode altogether. With regards to the actual skill set that you've mentioned of leaders who are there to be able to learn a little bit more, there was a little bit more of I sensed a conflict of what type of skills a leader needs to learn currently versus its employees, because if the employee becomes very literate with regards to the operational use of AI, then what's there remaining for the leader to be able to onboard and to make the AI as efficient as possible? Because I think in your book you did mention that there would be this differentiation with regards to what one or the other will need to learn as to cohesively interact with one another. With that regards, my next question is, what becomes more valuable in a leader when AI can already analyze, optimize, predict, and even build from the bottom up?
So for those who've got the book, in chapter 1, I talk about the three things, there's 3 skills that leaders need to build, and then the 2 skills that leaders had in the past that they need to let go of. And I guess to sort of try and answer your question using this as the framework, knowledge and control are now well, certainly knowledge is now commoditized.
Yes.
I can be a lawyer, I can be an engineer, I can be a finance expert, I can be anything I want quicker than I can talk to my boss. So it is commoditized. So, for those who are going through university or sort of new into the workforce, the idea that I need to become a deep domain expert and that alone will get me to those future promotions, I think that's changed. I think from a leadership perspective, we have been brought up for generations in this strong hierarchy where it is I am more senior than you, therefore you need to do as you're told. Don't question it, just do it. Again, that is dead.
I'm glad, in fact.
Well, exactly. Exactly. And I think we've seen this from, the millennials, coming into the workforce. They don't just do because they've been asked to do that. But AI has then also compounded this issue. And I think you want that curiosity and creativity in the workforce. So I think those two things don't hold us well, either as individuals or as leaders. And then for things that we need to gain, it is really around the three things are judgment, connection, and vision. So let me just think about those last two a little bit more.
Please.
The connection side, I think, is more critical than ever. Because if you think that tasks can be automated, process can be automated, we need to rethink through the workflow and how this decision is going to impact others. So actually, I need to talk to 10 people about this potential change to the business and the impact of this decision. So the connections and relationships you have in the business are going to be really what is going to help those decisions flow through the organization. And the same goes for vision. Is we in the past had, certainly my parents did the same job for 40, 50 years of their working life. And that's just one generation ago. I've already changed my job many, many times, and my son probably is going to be changing their job every 3-6 months. So I think there's a skills evolution that's coming. There is a workforce evolution that's coming. And so having the vision, which is, I'm doing this at the moment, but actually this could change, or I need to think about this, or this new technology has just come out that I need to do. So they're the skills that I think are increasingly important for individuals. And unfortunately, our education system doesn't always build those skills. So my message to everyone listening is to own their future, to be curious, to get an agent and start playing with it, to think about a job that you're doing at the moment or a task and think about how you can reimagine that to do it in a different way, completely change the way that you're currently doing those things. Because I think they're the skills that are going to be more critical in the future.
So it sounds that adoption and curiosity is going to be one of the key skills that you would recommend everyone in whichever role or position, as you just mentioned. It doesn't need to be someone who's just graduated or someone who is changing their careers or is quite well settled in their place, that all have to be curious and just, as you said, quite like the idea of reimagining the workflow that you're currently holding on. And with that, in regards to, I know that we've got a few minutes left and there's going to be a traditional element of the Future of Skills podcast that I'm going to recommend us do, meaning play, but we'll do in that manner in a moment. Before we go there, I'm very much curious about one particular question here, and that is the following. In your view, which in-demand human qualities will become impossible to automate?
I would, at the moment, I would probably say a word that I've already used, which is the ethics.
Yeah.
There are a number of quite worrying situations where agents have taken control of somebody's desktop, started making phone calls, started selling Bitcoin, making decisions that they should never have had the ability to make. And if that is out of control, then there's a scary place for society to be in. But I think the ability to make trade-offs on ethics
Yeah,
is, and not everyone's got strong ethics, but
that's
that I
true.
think is uniquely human. And I think empathy is then also connected to that, because, well, we are seeing, some incredible advances where AI can understand your sentiment, can understand predisposition to acting in a particular way. So it's starting to hint that it's understanding empathy and some of those human values, but it's still predictive.
Right.
So yeah, they would be my two words.
Thank you very much. I know I've put you a little bit on the spot because we haven't necessarily looked into this question from various angles. It's a little bit more coming as a result of us talking a little bit more about what are the skills to preserve and new to onboard. But on that note, our last element of the show, as usual, is going to be a little bit more of a flash Q&A that I very much cling to, which is literally having no particular rules other than please complete the sentence with one or few words of your
Right.
choice that you feel are more suited to that first part of the sentence. Communication today feels.
Communication today fills the gap to what is critical for humans to evolve in the AI era.
Excellent, thank you. The next one, what we're gaining out of our communication with AI is?
Huge potential to see things differently, to reimagine, possibilities, to put power into every single person's hands. So it's a democratization of knowledge and power. So yeah, huge potential.
Excellent, thank you. The next one, what we're losing out of our communication with AI is?
Potentially the outsourcing of our thinking.
Next one, the most undervalued human skill in the workplace is?
Critical thinking.
Thank you very much, agreed. The next one, what excites you about the future?
That it's completely different to what we've seen in the past. That people, no matter their education background, no matter their job, have got the power in their hands to use an incredible tool. So yeah, I think it's used in the right way is quite empowering. My message is to individuals to not have change happen to them,
Yeah.
but to take ownership for their future, which is to be empowered and to change ahead of how other people who you can't control might be choosing to make decisions. You can't control a leader's decision, but you can control your knowledge, your insights, your ways of working, and constantly learning.
Excellent. And the very last one is the future of communication will be?
Wow, that's a tough one. Okay, so AI slop is a word that I'm sure everyone has heard of, and so that's hard for me to give an example because I think a lot of people are now using AI to communicate, and it's not even their own voice. So I think the future of communication is questionable, whether it's somebody's authentic voice or just a response from a prompt. Yeah.
Peter, I can't thank you more for such an honest set of answers that you've given. Very transparent, very honest. And I think from the contents of your book, which when I've literally had a chance to go through it, I could understand that there's a lot of research they've put together, a lot of interviews with people who are actually making a change in large organizations already. And if there's anything at all that you might want to leave with the audience following the conversation that you just had, what would that be?
So I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you take out from it the power of human. And let me give you one one statistic which I absolutely love, that is, if you can make yourself 1% better every single day, so reading books like this, by studying, by playing with your own agents, by reimagining your current role, if you can do that by 1% every single day in a year, that will compound to nearly 40% better, because it's exponential growth. And I think if you can be 40% faster, smarter, quicker, with better judgment in a year's time, imagine how good that will be for you, as an employee or as a leader in a workplace, or in your degree, or as a future leader of other people. So for me, this is a empowering message.
Thank you very much. Very grateful for today's conversation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Nice. Thank you for having me.